When you think of Canyonlands National Park, a vast desert wasteland probably comes to mind. But there is one section that stands out as a mirage in the desert, an open field with grass and wildflowers. Problem is, it's not that easy to get to.
We're Matt and Cheryl, and we make travel guides for the West.
Come join us today as we hike the Chesler Park Trail in Canyonlands National Park. Canyonlands has 4 distinct sections, and they are each hours apart from each other. Today, we're in the Needles District, which is about an hour and a half south of Moab.
We stayed in Monticello the night before and got an early start to beat the heat today. The drive to the park is gorgeous, going through red buttes and pointy-like formations called the Six-Shooter Peaks. As we drove to the Elephant Hill trailhead, I was blown away by how pretty the needle rock formations were. I honestly believe that this was a scenic drive in its own right and couldn't wait to find out what we would see once we got off the road and started exploring the area on foot.
Okay, we're here at the trailhead for Chesler Park. This is exciting for me because this is kind of the last main thing I need to do in Canyonlands to say I have properly done everything in Canyonlands. There's always backcountry sections, but for the main accessible stuff, this is it. Canyonlands is a park that just keeps drawing me into it. I've been visiting this park since I was a kid, but recently it's really taken a hold of me. I visited Moab a handful of times over the course of a year because I had a goal to do nearly every major hike, drive, and activity possible in Arches and Canyonlands. But I really didn't expect to fall in love with Canyonlands the way I have. Each new adventure keeps outdoing the last one. Honestly, I didn't really want to hike 11 miles, but I did really want to see Chesler Park, and Canyonlands just keeps delivering.
I wasted no time getting to it. Didn't ease us in at all.
Nope.
It was rough.
I love desert hiking. Wide open spaces, trails that seem to last forever, dead trees, red rocks. I felt like I'm in a Western movie. We had to do a bit of up and down at the beginning of this hike, mostly up, and I was surprised at how challenging it was. But once we got out of the initial climbing, I loved seeing all the needles. The rock formations were amazing. They were long and skinny, and there's hundreds of them. It's so cool to see. I also loved how far away I could see because it's not very mountainous. I felt like I could see forever.
This hike is 3 miles to get to the Chesler Park section, and then it's a 5-mile loop around the park, and then 3 miles back to the trailhead on the same path we came. Okay, we've come 3 miles so far, right? Is that what we figured?
Yeah.
And quite a bit up and down. We started early because we're trying to finish before it gets too boiling hot, and I think we started at 60 degrees.
Yes.
So it's 60 degrees. It's supposed to get up to about 87 today, so a big temperature swing, but it already felt hot at 60 degrees on the rocks. So
It's pretty exposed, and it is desert.
Pretty hike and a lot of variety and stuff like that, but supposedly the best is yet to come, but it has been challenging.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Once you get to this sign, the standard advice is to go counterclockwise around the loop. So what did I do? I went clockwise. Somehow I actually got mixed up and went the wrong direction, which took us through a gorgeous meadow, but we would pay the price for my mistake later.
I thought we'd seen the very best of the needles at the first of the hike, but then we climbed through some rocks and the land opened up. It was filled with beautiful wildflowers. I couldn't believe that in such a desolate land that such colorful flowers were thriving there, and there were so many of them. I was completely delighted to be walking along this packed dirt trail with these flowers at my feet and views of the needles in the background. I was in complete heaven.
Native Americans once wandered this crazy landscape, and later, incredibly, this vast area became one of the largest cattle ranches in the entire country. Cattle grazed in this valley, and cowboys chased them all over these crazy needle formations. There's even a cowboy camp in the park, which I just found fascinating. Howdy, partner. I guess I fit in with this little scene here behind me. This is a cowboy camp here in Canyonlands National Park. And this is called the Needles section of Canyonlands, and it is much less visited than the northern section, which is called the Island in the Sky. And already, I think this might be the better section of Canyonlands. If you visit Canyonlands, you got to come to the Needles section. Indian ruins, cowboy camps. What a cool area. They don't know for sure, but Chesler Park probably got its name from an early cowboy. Cheryl says that's a cairn.
That's a cairn. In the desert, a lot of times the trail is not super easy to follow, and so they'll build these cairns, and the rule is that if you see a cairn, you should be able to see the next cairn from standing it. That's kind of how you find your way. The other little tip is a lot of times there's dead logs just laying across the trail, and if you see that, that means that's not the way to go. You got to not cross the log. But this is making me chuckle because this is the biggest cairn I've ever seen. A lot of times the cairns are like that little thing over there.
Yeah, a little tiny one down there. Some ranger had a lot of fun with this, so I'm high.
They're making a statement. Don't miss this turn.
Also, the rangers make these, and we're not supposed to change them or mess them up.
No, or build additional ones. You just leave it how it is, even though it's just a pile of rocks.
Karen, as in, I want to talk to the manager?
No, cairn.
I want to talk to the national park manager about the size of this cairn.
I was a complete water maniac and packed 3 liters of water in my camel bag, plus 2 16-ounce water bottles for good measure. Matt always makes fun of me for my water obsession, but nothing stresses me out more than the thought of running out of water. This advisory is 100% true. I legit brought a gallon of water and drank the whole thing. And Matt and I did this in about 5 hours. And I think about when they tell you to kind of know your limits, I thought about, well, I did a half marathon 2 weeks ago, but this pushed me. This was hard. So I would say definitely have your right gear, have your right food, and just make sure you're prepared. I was also a knucklehead and had to buy longer socks from the grocery store because all I packed were the ankle socks that I like to run in, but those weren't going to work with my hiking boots. Trying a new pair of socks on an 11-mile hike is a terrible idea.
We kind of have World War II to thank for the Needles being a part of the national park. The war brought about the Jeep, and after the war, vets used the machine to explore remote places like southern Utah. Thanks to the Jeep, the superintendent of Arches National Park, Bates Wilson, spent time exploring the Canyonlands region and fell in love with it. He pushed for the creation of Canyonlands National Park. They were originally going to build a road to Chesler Park, which would have been great because then I would not have to be hiking 11 miles right now. But by the time the park was created, the environmental movement was picking up steam, and Wilson kind of felt this should remain a jeeping and hiking park. So the road never happened. But it does make the Needles district just a little frustrating because when you visit the Needles, you want to see the Needles. Instead, the vast majority of visitors only see them from a distance. As Edward Abbey once said, you have to get out of your car and walk to see the Needles.
We're here at this amazing viewpoint at Chesler Park here, and we're close to halfway through the hike, I think. Cheryl's been a little worried about whether we can make it 11 miles. We realize it's been a long time since we've done a hike this long.
Yes, and 11 miles hiking is longer than like 11 miles walking or 11 miles even running because you're having to do all this up and down, and it's not always the ideal temperature or shade or things like that.
And you worry about seats and socks and blisters and then the heat. It hasn't gotten boiling hot yet, but we think it will. I don't know if we're freezing to death.
Let's see here.
I'm filming and not helping.
So chivalrous.
That's your favorite section so far?
Oh yeah, this is neat. I've never been in such a long slot canyon before, and this is just like a great big cave. It's pretty adventurous. After 7 miles, we were both pretty gassed. This was a pretty challenging hike, and it was heating up. I think it was around 85 degrees, and it felt even hotter in the desert when there's no shade and the heat was radiating off the red rocks.
This beastly hill is the reason we were supposed to go counterclockwise so we could go down it rather than up it.
Do you ever start dreaming of sitting in your car when you're hiking? It was around this point that I started thinking that, but we still had a while to go, and I could tell it was going to be an uphill climb from here. My feet were pretty sweaty from my cheap grocery store socks, and I was super afraid I was going to get a blister. I was also a little hungry, and believe it or not, I had drunk all my water from my Camelback and was starting to go through my emergency water bottles. I had to keep reminding myself that I love desert hiking because at the moment, I was not a fan.
But then we walked through a crack in the rock where we could see Chesler Park again. We had circled the park, descended into canyons, and trudged up the death hill. But this was our reward. Oh man, I just loved this desert meadow. One of the prettiest desert places I've ever been. It's kind of unfortunate that there isn't an easier way to get here so that more people could enjoy this, which is what the national parks are all about. But I admit that the hard journey made us appreciate it a lot more, and we felt like we had it all to ourselves. Yes, you can still get some quiet time with nature in our national parks. Terry Tempest Williams, a well-known nature writer from Utah, said that Canyonlands is where the earth bears its bones.
Okay, how long did it take us?
5 hours. I guess just a little No, it took us almost it.
Started at 7 and ended at 1.
Yep.
So yeah, 6 hours. And I'm so glad I did it. And I'm also really glad I'm done.
If you liked this adventure, check out our wild Jeep adventure on Moab's best off-roading trail.